I don't think there will ever be a moment where we don't need encouragement to be creative or along our creative process. There is always a time for encouragement while you're making that song, writing that book, writing that post, taking that picture, editing that video. It'll always be useful to have encouragement along the way or to seek it out or to have some type of muse or something pushing you forward or even not pushing you, but informing you forward. I think there's so much to being informed about how to go about your creative process, even if you're like, that information ain't for me, bro. Like, it helps you figure out where you want to go after that. And today we're going to talk about 3 steps towards being more, the word, I'm forgetting the word right now. It's at the tip of my tongue. It's being more declarative, but being vigilant, being creatively vigilant. And I think that being vigilant is really tough because it takes belief, it takes confidence, it takes a lot of things. And it also takes walking by some of the ghosts in our heads that are ghosts in our head that are telling us to do otherwise. I saw a meme today that a artist friend of mine posted. She posted the artists and it like showed them just like this. And like there's like a big book beneath them. And then it said the art. And then there was nothing. And I was just like, oh. And I knew it was this person right away because I was like, there's a lot of frustration in that particular community of making your art, painting, drawing, creating physical, like visual art. It's insanely tough. And we're gonna go through 3 steps, and I'm gonna give them to you right away, and then give you some stories and in-depth analysis on it. And the first step is to understand that you've always been a creative. You've always been a creative. You've always been creating. I should say that, not putting a label as a creative. We'll just try to deal with verbs as much as possible. 2 is giving it grace. And then 3 is understand that these creative projects or whatever ideas or musings are speaking to you for a reason. They are dying to utilize you as a vessel for them to be, communicated. And there's another video where I got this from, but I wanted to tweak it a little bit and put it in my own voice. And I could add a lot more to it. We'll do that another day. And the first thing, speaking about, you've always been a creative. And I think that we all have a childlike creative spirit. Obviously, when we're children, we're looking at everything. We're making things up. We're making projects out of things. We're naming things. I remember we were on the school bus and we'd be like, that's my house. That's my house. Ooh, that's my car. Ooh, look at that. That could be a castle. And we're creating things out of the ether, just out of thin air. And we have this creative, diabolically vigilant spirit to just like go for everything. And we're naming everything. We're creating everything. We're making things up, making believe. And when you look at the actual term make believe, you are making it and then believing it. And I remember playing make believe with other classmates, in kindergarten and first grade and be like, holy crap, this person is really committed. And a lot of people do this as adults in Dungeons and Dragons, in other games and whatnot. But that spirit, you have to understand that that's been with you your whole life. It really has been. And it will forever be with you, only if you allow it to. And I think I go back to this idea of we can cut off our creative spirit, our receiving of it. However, it is always speaking to us. It is always there. We are in charge of whether we can tune into the creative spirit. Do we want to turn the radio on? Do we want to turn to the frequency? And I think that it's just simply allowed when we're kids. We're like, oh yeah, this is normal. It's totally normal. Yeah, I'm a video game character. I'm flying now. Ooh, I got like superpowers. And when I thought about this, I thought of 2 immediate insane, I shouldn't say insane, 2 immediate creative endeavors when I was a kid. One was we would play the video game Mega Man all the time. And I remember I just had this wild idea to make a Mega Man radio show. And we had little tape decks, and you could record your voice into it and record the music in the backdrop. And I remember making voices and like acting like a radio commentator or DJ and being like, the next hit up is from Cutman. You know that he's the third level in Mega Man 2. Let's see how this one bops. And like it was the craziest thing because I was like, it was so cool to me at the time. And I remember I held on to the tape and I think I might have taped over it or something happened, but it was really an adventure that I had so much fun and joy in taking in. And I was just like, oh my goodness, this is the coolest thing ever. I made it live. I could listen back to it and it was dope. And the second thing that I did was a little bit older. I was not listening in class. Sure wasn't. Sixth grade, fifth grade, think about no, sixth grade. And I was busy drawing logos for every public school in the city that I live in, elementary schools. Schools that have no mascot or logo, mind you. They just have like a name. And I ended up drawing all of these logos. And I was like, oh, this is what would go on the side of the football helmet. Oh, this is what would go on, the jersey. And I just remember all these things. And I was like, yeah, this is it. And I then lost that book. And I was so sad. And we're going to tie this back into the end. But I had this idea that I was like, like the athletic commissioner of the city, like all these different, like there's dozens of elementary schools, if not hundreds, where I am. And that was just something that spoke to me. I can never explain to you why or how or what the direction was, but I just loved to do it and I found joy in it. And I think that you probably have some of the same things too. You have a creative spirit that you take joy in and that you love thinking about, and that it just gives you warmth just to like take it on and like start to piece it together. I cannot for the life of me tell you why my aunt does what she does or how she has the patience for it, but she embroiders or knits like an absolute gangster. I mean, and then she submits it to the state fair. Like that type of skill and craft just takes so much patience and grace, which brings us to the next step. Give yourself grace. I understand that it's not easy to give yourself grace, but it's also, you got to take the meritocracy out of it. You got to take the good, bad out of it. You got to take the up, down. You got to whatever. And I understand that giving it 10 minutes is better than giving it 0 minutes. However, I think giving it love is better than giving it hypercriticism. And you really can start to flow with the creative spirit or your project or whatever it is that needs to be done when you start to give yourself grace. And an example of giving grace for me right now is in a lot of the songs that we're making for the next album. I had to stop, take a step back, and just see what would happen in rehearsal. I wasn't gonna figure it out by just sitting down and being like, oh, this needs to be this. I just really said, you know what, let's see what calls to us. Let's see what speaks to us when we're in the middle of it. And what I ended up doing for this next album is, instead of being like, oh, we're all memorized and we're good to go for the show, I booked 3 shows where I'd memorized nothing. I booked 2 of them where I memorized nothing. The last one I did was last Saturday, where I had a lot of it memorized, but I still didn't have it completely memorized. And I had an iPad up there with me. And I mean, myself years ago would have been like, oh my God, how dare you? But this particular process, I was like, no, I just want to feel this out. I just want to see how this vibes with people, see what happens, see how they feel, see how I feel, see how the musicians that I'm playing with feel, and see what happens. And I think that was I know it's a really important part of the process. Now, that goes into a little more in depth about giving grace. It's that, do you have a perfectionist mindset or a growth mindset? Perfectionist mindset would say, don't ever do one of those shows. Don't you take stage not knowing the lyrics. How dare you? And so I really looked at it more as growth mindset. Okay, what can we get out of this performance? What can we put together here? What can we learn from each other in this performance? What can we learn from this process, this part of the process, and then going forward? So it helped me understand the project as a whole, and then also to like book some smaller shows instead of like being like, oh, we got to get this 1,000-person venue filled up, and it just, come on, man, like just do it at a small space in the community, see how people vibe with it, and then start making bigger plans later on and promoting it even more. And that really, really, really helped the process a lot. And also it helped the musicians that I work with to just be along, like be there for the process. I didn't have to hand it to them. I wanted to give them a coloring book with less lines and more space for them to fill in and like delineate where they wanted to be, and for me too. And so I think when you give yourself grace, when you give yourself a growth mindset, that's going to change a lot of things for you. And then the last step is, and this is going to sound a little woo-woo, these creative ideas are musing to you for a reason. They're choosing you. Now, there's this one idea, this one theory that parents don't choose their children. Children choose their parents. There's this idea that, kids, spiritually, they find their way to a family and they're like, yes, I'll be a part of this family. Whether or not that's true, that's the idea for the creative spirit, is that the idea is choosing you for a reason. It has chosen you for a reason. And I can speak to this. I'll go from dark to light on this. I have had a particular movie script in my mind for over a decade. And I can see everything vividly. I can see the characters. I know exactly what they would say. I know exactly who they are. I know exactly what the city looks like. I know exactly what they dress as. I know exactly how the fight choreography goes. It is maddening. And I cannot shake the story from my head. And I told my writer at Onsite Public Media, they said, okay, what were the ideas that you have for the upcoming films? I said, I already know the next 3. And I there's no way I'm not doing anything else other than those. And they said, well, what do you mean? I said, I'm going to do those films before I pass away. That is a guaranteed fact of life. Like they've been musing to me so long and so vividly, I can see them, that I got to do them. I got to write the script. I will write the script. The scripts have been written partially, and they get written every now and then, added to, and that's part of the process too. There's a form of self-sabotage where you get almost comfortable with just being in pre-production the whole time. I know a lot of musicians that have just rehearsed for years, held on to albums for over a decade. And maybe that's part of their process, not for me to judge. However, when I hear certain artists talk about, this thing I'm going to release, this thing I'm going to do, this thing I'm going to, it breaks my heart a little bit, because I want to see them release the thing for their own sake. Like they talk about it, they're like, I want to release this thing, and I'm like, yes, go for it. And then it just never comes out. It's kind of one of those things. It's like the elephant in the room. It's like, how's rehearsal going, buddy? I don't even want to ask that question. But the ideas and the visions are like coming to you for a reason. Like these creative things are coming to you to use you as a vessel to translate them into the 3D, the external world. And what ended up happening as a kid, losing this book with all these school logos, what did I end up doing? What do you think I ended up doing? I ended up pairing up with the graphic designer, because I don't know Adobe Illustrator, but I do have a creative mind for what the public high school logos could look like in my city, the city I live in. We created a line of purchasable school logos and like merch for the public schools, and it was really cool. And we're gonna make more, and we sold like over 60 of them, which was great. I was expecting 100, but I think I'll take it. So that I was really, really ecstatic. And when it happened, I was like, oh my goodness, I know that we could do this again, and we could keep going with this, and we could keep making more, and we can alter them and make them cool and da-da-da-da. And I was just really blown away by it. But that had mused to me in 5th grade, y'all. Like, that's a minute ago. And the fact that I'm like a grown adult now, and I'm like, I still want to do that. I still think that's a cool idea. I thought that was amazing. I had this one lyric in my head that I kept saying, and this is just to give you the idea of the musing, that you have something that's been spoken to you. You have something that's been on your mind. Acknowledge it. It wants you to acknowledge it. Like the first thing you can do is just be aware of it. Honor it. Honor the creative, like artistic spirit that is like throwing an idea at you. I had this one line in my head. I never understood what it was for, what to do with it. And the line was, baby, hop into the ride. I ain't got much time. I don't want to give you the runaround. Got an engine that roars and a bass that booms. We can outrun every cop in town. That was it. Had that written in a book for over 5 years. What happens later is we can outrun every cop in town. Today we got this moment in our hand to deliver the chance and make it. I have not sung this song in like over a year, but the song is called "Hop Into the Ride." Once again, I'm asking for your hand to hold and tell me it'll be alright. I mean, like, that song came together off of that line that I'd known for over 5 years. So to see it happen now is wild. The other example I'll give you, I was going through a fairly rough time in my life in 2010. And I had actually it was before that. I think it was 2008. It wasn't a rough time then, but I had this idea for, it just, the title came to me. The title was Best When Sung from the Gutter. And it was kind of like this Charles Bukowski-ish, title where it's like, this is going to be most authentic when it's sung from a very rough place. That disappears. 2 years later, 2010, it comes back to me. Oh, interesting. I then think to myself, then it goes away, comes back to me again in 2019. And I'm like, oh, I think I want to write a poetry book of all the poems that I put together called Best When Sung from the Gutter. And 2019 hits. I put some semblance of poems together, print them off at Office Max, and then I do a show. And I kind of sold some of them, I think. I'm not sure. And then last year, I was like, well, I need to make that official. I need to make this like an actual book, make a little like website for it where people can read it, yada, yada, yada. And so I put together the book. And the book was right there. And so the book is now, one second, I'm going to find this book for you. Boom. That's the book. Made it. We'll put the link to that in the video. But the whole point is that had been speaking to me for over 10 years, over 15 years. That's crazy. And I know that you have the same thing as well. I know that you have a similar experience. I know that you have something that's been speaking to you for some time. And although it may seem absolutely unattainable, your job right now is to just honor it. Don't worry about the how, dude. Don't worry about the how. Just honor it right now. Honor the fact that you are a conduit, that you are a vessel for creative musings to things that you can't understand right now. How you're going to do it is what it is. But you acknowledging it is the first step. Understanding that you've always been a creative. Next step, give yourself some grace. Give yourself some space and grace to just like take it in and maybe sketch it down. And then the next step is understand that it's speaking to you for a reason. And that you can act, and it's that part of that reason is because you can make it come to life. You absolutely can. So best of luck. I know that you're going to do it one way or another, because that's the only way that any art has gotten out is through one way or another. All right. Love y'all. We will see you in the next video.